I'd like to start this morning with a quote by Rumi, the 13th century poet from Afghanistan. And he said, "Out beyond the idea of wrongdoing and right doing is a field. I'll meet you there." And I think what's important about that is that we don't meet in the field of ideas. It's out beyond the field of ideas. Because it's when we go beyond ideas and then we actually embody the thoughts and the feelings and that we are with ourselves in a presence, that really what starts to come through is our connection with other people. And what starts to happen is our ability to relate becomes the primary thing that happens. Thoughts and ideas are what we disagree about, and they are the things that often prevent us from experiencing our heart. We're so busy thinking. We're so busy trying to figure out, do I like what that person's saying? Do I agree with that Republican? Do I like that Democrat? And as we know, we're all here today because we're very fed up with a system that's broken, partisan politics and money, corrupting our democracy, and we're all wondering what's next. So as we wonder what's next, I wanted to let you know that what brought me here today was a sense of inner freedom and presence that I started to cultivate. And it's been years in the making. I studied nonviolent communication training with Marshall Rosenberg. I really wanted to learn and understand what is it in our language that prevents us from really being with other people. I wanted to know that in my personal life. I also wanted to know it in politics. I've studied Russian history, literature, and language. I've studied the revolutionary periods in history. I understand the left and the right political spectrum. That map that we know is really not useful to us has a number of problems. If you think about who is on that map, who are the ideators? Who were the ones that came up with the ideology? Mao Zedong, Karl Marx. Think of all the ones you know, and almost all of them will be male. That's not to blame men. We were living at a time, and our political constructs come from a very limited set of ideas. And so when we want to get beyond the idea of right and wrong, and we want to enter a new field, that is where the hope lies. And the Transpartisan movement is creating that field. And so as we plan and hope to enter a new field where we can actually meet one another beyond ideas, there will be skills that we'll need to develop and an awareness and a way of being together that I'd like to spend most of this talk talking about today. Because in those earlier periods, we had to move from a system of governing that mirrors human development. Human development, we start as dependent. We then grow into our independence. The adolescent years are typically about me, mine, my self-interest. It's an exciting time. But eventually and hopefully, we mature into our years of interdependence, recognizing that we really need the other. And not only do we need them, that we love them and that they're part of our family. We start to recognize when we're no longer a teen that the well-being of everyone around me matters and that the way I am will make a difference in my family. So with governing institutions, we've gone from dependent relationships and monarchies to an amazing era of independence. And it is time. The next evolution in democracy is to move into an era of interdependence. And yet we're not there yet in terms of declaring it. And so what I boldly did 2 years ago, when I was fed up, just as we all were, and it was during the time of the Occupy Wall Street movement, people were out on the streets, not just in the United States, but globally. And as we know, democracy is not just at risk here in the US, it's at risk worldwide. So as I watched that movement unfolding, I couldn't join in the streets. I have a family. I couldn't leave and get pepper sprayed and risk arrest. So what I did do, I did what I could. And I sat down and I read the Declaration of Independence, wondering, how did we get here? How did we get so far astray? What could have been missing at the founding of our country and what is now needed. So as I read that document, I realized, well, of course, what's missing is a diversity of people and their voices. What was missing at the birth of our nation was people of all different denominations and gender and race and class, helping to build a system that actually would bring true justice for all. So I sat down that night and I wrote a Declaration of Interdependence, and I rewrote the original declaration word for word, sentence by sentence, until it satisfied me. And as I did that Declaration of Interdependence, I did what I as a woman and mother felt compelled to do. I brought in the concepts of love and partnership and compassion, the things that 2 years ago, and even still today, are words that a lot of people are afraid to bring into the body politic. It might mean that you're weak. It might mean that, you're just too emotional, or that you're not sophisticated enough. And it's very clear to me that we do not need more ideologists and academicians and political strategists that are going to tell us what the solutions are. We need an engagement that everyone at a lay position can listen to, can participate in, and can begin to have their own concepts about what it is to live in an interdependent world and how to merge the ideas from the left and the right spectrum. So as I did that Declaration of Interdependence, I actually found that I was becoming transpartisan, even though I didn't know that that word exists. I had no idea. But here I found myself in a field of deep inquiry. I was interested to know, what did other people think besides me? How would I understand the conservative women in the issue of women's rights, which I have been particularly interested in as a woman? So I found myself reading what's called The Flip Side of Feminism by Phyllis Schlafly and her niece, to see if I couldn't really understand what is the need that is behind what for me feels like a very alien concept of a way to be a woman. And so I also I started to think, how would I partner with them? How could I see them as my friends in a place, in a time as a feminist where that is really not what we talk about? Just with the political left and the right, the same is true for us as women. So I began to feel my way into a transpartisan field. And I started to wonder, what is this partnership between men and women? If I would like women to be in government in greater numbers, and if we're going to ever have women's voices and our power a part of the decision-making bodies for our future generations, given the stakes that we're facing, women's wisdom is critical to have. But how would we forge a new partnership between men and women? In what I grew up in the 70s, at the very beginning, what was called the War of the Sexes. So is the war over? How are we going to end it? Who's going to end it? And where's the field in which we're going to have these conversations? So as I did that Declaration of Interdependence, I came up with a concept of, well, what if we had new founding mothers? What if we had new founding fathers? What if we had founding youth? What if we had founding elders? What if we had a founding family to really launch a new era in our country to declare interdependence? What happened was I started to feel empowered. Can that happen? I don't know. Do we need a political movement in the United States? Do we need a meta movement, a people's movement? Almost everyone you hear these days is saying, yes, absolutely, we do need that. Will it happen? I don't know. But I gave myself the freedom to imagine and to dream into that space and to start talking about the concepts that we're not quite yet doing in our world. What does love have to do with this? We talk about gender parity, we talk about diversity, we talk about inclusivity, and we really need to have, the right numbers of people in the room. But what does that really mean? Do I want to be with people? Do I know how to talk across those divides? And do I know how to actually, instead of perceiving them as divides, do I instead have an open and curious attitude that makes me realize they're not divides? They, in fact, are diverse perspectives that are absolutely critical if we're going to have whole systems thinking. And we are being told by so many people that whole systems thinking is actually the only way we're going to be getting out of these problems, because the problems are complex, they're multifaceted, and they're very interrelated, and they are interdependent. And so how could we become interdependent? So with the transpartisan movement, the invitation to come into this space of not knowing, into a field that goes beyond ideas, and that actually invites us to come in a way unprepared, because we're very fully prepared. Every moment in human history has been bringing us to this moment. We are standing on the shoulders of every political leader, every movement leader, every loving mother, every loving action that has ever taken place. It is what is making us aware of the complexity of the problem, but also it's helping us to start to experience in a new way a whole new set of possibilities of what the answers are. When a window closes, another one opens. And as we see the intractable solutions, we're forced to go to a new place. So in that field that the transpartisan movement is creating, what I hope is that over the next few years, that we will all join that field together, paying attention to the skill sets that it requires of us, not because we need new skills. I don't need any more new skills. I don't. What I need is love. What I need is connection. And what I need is a sense of community. Martin Luther King Jr. said one of the most beautiful things about beloved community. How will we build beloved community? And how will we, I'd like to ask, how will we become a truly global human family? And that will be by treating each other as though we're family, and as though it really matters whether or not I can love the person that I disagree with, and that I look forward to sitting in the room with them, and that I want to get to know them because they have some very life-serving need behind their aliveness that is pushing for a strategy that makes sense to them. But if I can understand what they're needing and what they're feeling and have a conversation, that is the common ground. That's the field. So I hope we'll all meet in that field. And I'm looking forward to this afternoon when we'll talk about what are some of the skills and what's the new roadmap that might help us find that field and then understand how to enter it fully and with a full heart. Thank you.